This is a hard video to make because I made a video about getting divorced, and at the end of the video I said I was never gonna get married again, and it's come full circle, and I've changed my mind, and I'm gonna get married again. But not to a regular husband or a wife. I'm getting married to my work spouse, because that's a thing. You don't know what a work spouse is? Just go on LinkedIn and look up hashtag work spouse, hashtag work wife, hashtag work husband. It's probably the dumbest thing that you'll look at all day, and maybe save yourself a few brain cells and just don't read it. But that's what we're gonna talk about in today's Corporate Cringe video, so welcome aboard. Where did this term even come from? A work wife is a term spawned from office wife, which itself dates back to the 1930s when it was used by men to describe an especially high-functioning secretary. Yeah, so way back in the 1930s when the bosses were, slapping some cake with the secretaries, they say, hey, that's my office wife, and then I go home to my real wife. I don't think this is a great term to use anymore. What role does a work husband actually play? Well, this comes straight from womenshealthmagazine.com. A work husband is someone you can and do confide in about everything from how you felt about your boss's presentation last Wednesday to the elements of your life outside of work. This person is your #1 ally and advisor at work, the person you have politically incorrect conversations with and give honest opinions to. None of that sounds like a good idea to say to any coworker. According to a survey by Simply Hired, which is where this all came from, more than 50% of female employees and 44% of male employees said that they had a work spouse at some point in their careers. The topics they discuss with these coworkers range from other colleagues and work projects to problems at home and sometimes even their sex lives. So that right there is bad. This is not a good idea. You should not talk about those things with your work spouse. So basically they want you to have everything that you would have with your husband or wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend except for the physical intimacy. And until that happens, because if you start talking about that stuff and you're bonded with that person like that, this is just an affair waiting to happen. So, you're gonna have a work spouse or a work wife, and then you're gonna have some work kids too. Here's another quote. At the end of the day, you want a work husband who makes all those hours at the office that much more enjoyable. Whether that stops at sharing laughs and cries or expands to sharing your heart and soul is up to you. Here's a post from LinkedIn when I looked up hashtag work husband. It says, work wives and husbands, do you have one and do you miss them at the weekend? I think some of us spend far too much time on LinkedIn. Someone that you met on here and formed a bond with. Mine is the fabulous Peter. We share the same sarcastic sense of humor and we're in touch every day. Who is your virtual husband or wife? Tag them and tell them how much you care. And so if we look at the relationship here, she's a contract manager and she tagged Peter here, and Peter is the CEO. So you have someone in a higher position of power and someone in a lower position of power. And does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound like there's no intimacy going on? It's not. What does that seem like to you? Of course she tags the CEO. The comments on this post are absolutely hilarious. So Peter responded because he was tagged. He says, wow, flattered beyond words. I'm married to the queen of LinkedIn. Does that automatically make me the king of LinkedIn, or is that not how this works? Thanks. So kind. XX. Imagine if your husband or wife saw you typing this stuff. Here's another post from Becky. So I'm officially moved back into my new old office now, which means only one thing. I can look at and annoy our sales manager Mike all day long with, Mike, can you just? And it's not too far to throw things at him to get his attention. It's a good job we get on. And here's a picture. All of this sounds like a slippery slope to affairs and relationships that get intimate, and then you have to break away from that intimate relationship, and then people get hurt, and then people get mad, and then there's tension in the workplace, and it just makes it terrible for everyone involved. But, why would companies promote this? Why would companies tell you to go find a work spouse? Participants also reported having more fun at work and felt more loyal to their companies because of their office matrimony. Literally, office matrimony. Mainly the reason that companies do this is so that you're loyal to them and you won't leave because your friend works there, and you're like, oh, I can't quit because my work husband, my work spouse, that psychological tactic, have a work family, why not have a work spouse? And next step is work kids and stuff. What a joke. Here's another quote that says, having a work spouse is particularly important in environments that are potentially toxic. So instead of going to get a new job and finding a new workplace that isn't toxic, you just stay there because your best friend works there. So this isn't a positive thing. You should never have to stay in a toxic workplace environment. So here's some advice on how to handle your relationship when it comes to going home at night and having to justify this nonsense to your actual husband or wife. What if my partner feels insecure about my work husband? When talking to your partner, it might be a good idea to use different terms like a work wingman. So just lie. Dr. Chloe says, giving even a platonic friend a semi-romantic sounding designation could potentially pose problems for your relationship, she explains. Oh gee, you think? To combat any jealousy from your SO, be open with them about your work. No secrets whatsoever. It could be helpful to arrange an event of sorts to let the two meet in person. So in essence here, a work spouse is everything that you would have at home except physical intimacy. because they're definitely promoting sharing inside secrets, talking about your home life, talking about your kids, talking about your sex life, talking about the things you don't like about your boss. So imagine, you start giving all this dirt to your friend, and then your friend gets a promotion and now you feel salty about it. Imagine how everything could go wrong when you're that close with someone and you don't move together in the company. And then one person wants something else, they want to become more than just a work wife, but you're like, I can't, I got an actual wife at home, I got an actual husband at home, I can't be more than this. And the other person's like, oh, okay, I see how it is. And then they stop talking to you. And then your work dynamic gets messed up. And now you're really emotionally invested in that person, so you want to make it up, and your productivity drops. And you see the giant mess that this can have in your life if you buy into this bullshit. They go on to promote emotional cheating. Having emotional backup in the office is positive for the workplace as a whole. Work spouses counsel one another through difficult situations, including stress and burnout. Your friends and family are there to support you. You don't need to go confide in someone like this at work. That's really dangerous to do that. And it's not, maybe the other person doesn't want all your baggage. I went on to Google more about this topic of work wives and husbands and looking for stories of how this actually played out. And I found one about Renee. Let me read it to you. Like many women, Renee, she found a work husband, a man interesting, smart, and funny with whom she spent 9 hours a day. The chemistry was obvious, but nothing ever happened, in quotations. Or did it? Question mark. They made a beeline for each other every morning, and their chats became more and more personal. I definitely talked to him about things I didn't talk to my husband about, including my husband, because my marriage was so unhappy. Often, people who become involved in emotional affairs feel something is lacking at home. It makes them feel good to feel understood and feel desired. It's like candy. You go home and have your vegetables, and you go to work and you have your candy. This is probably what would really happen when you have a husband or a wife at work. They go on to give you some signs that you've crossed the line with your work spouse and maybe you should back off a little bit. You spend a lot of emotional energy on the person. You end up sharing stuff that you don't even share with your partner, hopes and dreams. You make a point to find ways to spend time together, and that time becomes very important to you. You share your feelings of marital dissatisfaction, but they're promoting this. Companies are promoting this, that you should do this and that this is a good thing. And then they go on to give you some advice on quitting the affair. So they don't even call it a work spouse anymore. It's just a straight up affair. These affairs can be hard to stop, but to give your marriage a chance, you just have to end it. I don't think there's a halfway. It's too slippery of a slope. Your next step, figure out what led you to make that connection with this other person, says psychologist Janice. You might be wondering, how are companies pushing this work spouse nonsense onto you? Well, they're doing experiments to match you with your work spouse. This happened to Renee, and she actually wrote about it. I underwent an experiment myself, except the person I was paired with was a stranger. The rules were simple. Look into the other person's eyes for as long as you can without speaking and take note of how that makes you feel. As you'd expect, I felt a little silly at first. My stranger and I cracked a few nervous smiles, which turned into suppressed laughter, but after we'd pushed through the first 5 minutes, my feelings toward him shifted dramatically. At the 10-minute mark, I could see strangers hugging and holding hands in my peripheral vision, and I heard some crying. There was a lot of emotional energy in the room. No, we didn't fall in love, although I wish that's how this story ended. She goes on to say, I started to feel connected to him in a way that even now I can't articulate. There's some experiments like this on YouTube where you can go and you can see strangers looking into each other's eyes and watch them get emotional. It's like this weird psychological tactic that makes you feel bonded to people. As I was doing some research about work spouses, I found a comic where they try to downplay this. My work spouse and I are getting divorced. She wants half my paycheck, my BlackBerry, my funny mug collection, and custody of our favorite lunch spot. This is no joke though. If you have a falling out with someone that you're that emotionally invested to at work, it's gonna be difficult to work with. And you can make light of it, but that's gonna be real. That's gonna be a real thing. There's gonna be sabotage and work tension, and other coworkers are gonna be like, should we bring you both into the meeting, or should one of you stay out there, even because we're gonna have to do the meeting twice if we can't bring you both in, because we're gonna have to talk to each one of you individually. It's gonna make it awkward for everyone, and everyone at home too, which, as you can see from Renee, happens, probably more so than people want to admit. And what they should do is just implement a no fraternization policy like they do in the military. You can't have people in higher ranks mingling with people in lower ranks, and if you're husband and wife and you're both in the military, you can't have the same chain of command, and for obvious reasons. Imagine if you're at work and your work husband is in charge of pay raises, or your work husband is your boss. Just like we had that example earlier in the video where we're looking at Peter and that other lady. Obviously, Peter's a CEO and she's a subcontract manager, and there could be some serious favoritism or serious misuse of authority, and you could see how this sort of thing would play out. And no fraternization policies basically prohibit all this stuff, and it benefits everyone else. I'm trying to get to 200K by the end of the year, so leave a comment, not for the algorithm, because you want to say something about the video, and make sure to like the video, not for the algorithm, because you actually liked it. And if you didn't like it, double smash the thumbs down. That's fine. Really let me know. and hit subscribe if you already haven't done it. It'd be awesome to get to 200K before 2020, but we don't got a lot of time. Anyways, hope you enjoyed today's cringe. I don't know who thought up this, but this is dumb.